It's evident that he cares. What do you care about? Welcome to the Rock Newman Show. It's the Rock Newman
America
Show.
is the cause of all that you're seeing on TV in Haiti right now. But it wasn't just America. I wrote their names. I didn't want to miss any of them. There's a group, and it's called the Core Group. It's Brazil, Canada, France, the USA, and Israel. And you say, well, why? What are all those countries doing there? That's because we don't pay attention.
Welcome, beloved, and thanks for joining us for another segment of Rock Newman Show 2.0. I got to tell you that our guest today is someone that I have long thought about being able to interview. And without going through too much, background, we're interviewing him today. And if you see a big old silly looking smile on my face, it's because I am thrilled. This brother has, it seems, forever been in the struggle and been highly relevant being there and authority. I want to open today's show by, if you're anywhere in the DC, Maryland, or Virginia area, I want you to be aware that on March the 16th at the Life Center, Dr. B, you guys know Dr. B, Dr. Baruch is hosting Professor James Small. The topic of the discussion is going to be utilizing African spirituality and culture to survive the societal decline. That's on March the 16th at the Life Center. I'm going to be 1,000 miles away, but I just wish I could be there in person. The doors open at 6 p.m. The address is 9033 Central Avenue, Capitol Heights, Maryland. If you want to call and get your tickets, make your reservation, the number is 301-324-6900. And if it's okay with you, good sir, I want to go back to the theme of your presentation on this Saturday.
Yes, sir.
Utilizing African spirituality and culture to survive this societal decline. As one of my brilliant but sometimes grammatically incorrect brothers used to say, what do that mean?
Yeah, I understand.
Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, Brother Rock. I've been honored just watching you and your method of interviewing, which you make people get to it. Looking at that topic, utilizing African spirituality and culture to survive the societal decline, the first thing we always make sure of, without giving away too much of the lecture, is that people don't understand what spirituality is. And they don't understand what culture is. We confuse music and dancing and drama programs for culture. Those are tools of culture. Culture is a series of ideas on how human beings should live together. And you use the tools to try to teach those possibilities and probabilities. And so I'm going to try to go into detail on what the definition of culture is, which involves everything that people do. Spirituality, separate from religion, because religion is a tool of spirituality. Spirituality is a people's understanding of their relationship to cosmology and ecology and how the human function within those spheres, right? No matter what environment you're in, the rule doesn't change. The sun is the sun, the moon is the moon, the stars are the stars, and the same sun that shines on China shines on Washington, D.C. But in the different locations, people have ideas of how that's good for them or bad for them, meaning cosmology and ecology, what we get out of our environment. And we try to structure the principles of our lives to be in equilibrium, stay in harmony with cosmology and ecology. And that whole process of trying to understand that is what we call spirituality. what Western science, what Western, I can't call them civilized, because I'll have to be honest, they haven't hit the civilized level yet. But what the Western societies have done in the conquest of us over the last 2,000 plus years have stolen our spirituality, call it his hard science, and give us mythology and spookism and call that spirituality. No, what we call science, that's African sacred spirituality. All right? We were practicing geometry, physics, trigonometry before we met the European. And we were using those tools to define our relationship to cosmology and ecology. A good example, because I know my buddy Tony, who have worked in the digs in Kemet and have traveled there numerous times, and we've known.
And when you say Tony, you speak of Tony Browder.
Tony Browder, yes, sir.
Yeah.
He's my little brother.
Yeah.
He's the elder. But he would tell you that one of the scientists' class, we call them priests when we read history, but that's a mistake. They were not priests; they were scientists. And one of the class were astronomers, and their job was to study the cosmos, so they can tell people when it's time to plant, when it's time to mate your cows or your goat, when it's time to change the pasture, when it's time to harvest, when it's time to fish for what type of fish, and all these things. But you had to have a way to know when that was coming. You had to have some sign of it. And so they studied the cosmos. And this is okay, when the sun is here, the moon is here, the stars is here, and the constellation is here, this is what's going on Earth. So we replicate that year after year in our study. Then we can say for a fact, this is what you do here on Earth when these things are aligned. But the astronomer scientist, he doesn't have time to do anything. So the community took care of them. We'll make sure you got a place to live. We make sure you got a place to eat. We make sure you got clothing. You do this for us. But now, how do you interpret that science to the people, right? Because the people, the sheep herders, cattle herders, fishermen, carpenters, builders, people who harvest and so forth, plant crops, make cloth, all of these things, they don't have time to watch the stars. So now I'm the guy watching the stars. How do I interpret this extraordinary body of science to the masses in a way that they could use it in their daily life? So the astronomer creates astrology to explain astronomy to the masses. That's spirituality, brother.
Brother, your spirituality. Let me say, we're going to play that. I know right now, my producer partner, Avis J, there would be no Rock Newman Show 2.0 if it wasn't for him. That's my brother. That's my friend. That's my partner. I know we're going to take what you just said there and play it over again and again, and probably much more of what you communicate also. Thank you for that. Woven in to that communication, I heard, without it being said, that civilization, which we know started in the land of the black.
It's an African scientific construct.
Hello.
Okay.
So I heard that without it being said. I also heard when you talked about, I don't know, did you say European, or I might have read that somewhere? But I would give you the floor to explain what largely was the paradise of sort of civilization starting and growing, and all that it produced. And then the conflicts started to happen with invaders. If you could please talk to us about that.
Right. You know, the greatest civilization that we have access to study is Nile Valley, Happy Valley. Kemet, which is called Egypt. But it is not, it doesn't create itself. It came into being from people coming from West Africa, Central Africa, South Africa. 30 to 40,000 years before there's a Kemet, you find the Ankh and the symbol for Ra and chisel and stone in South Africa. That messes up all of the Egyptology concept of what's going on in Kemet. Because the civilization moved from the south as the river moved from the south. The Nile wasn't always there. That was a desert. The Sahara, which is now this massive desert, the biggest desert in the world, that was all lush green land full of rivers. We know the rivers were there because the rivers is under the ground now. And Muammar Gaddafi tapped into it, and that's how he created the enormous companies in Libya. They call them aquifers, right? These major rivers. But when the climate changed, that probably due to a shifting in the Earth's axle, the moisture moved southwards. And so the rivers of the Congo and the big great lakes we call Nyanza, which they call Victoria, and the rivers from Malawi and all those places in the south began to flow because Africa's high in the middle and low in the north. So things flow from the south to the north in Africa, not from north to south. And so they began to drain into this huge valley that became the Nile River. Most people will talk about the Blue Nile coming out of Ethiopia. That's the major source, and the White Nile coming out of Uganda. But there's a third source to that, and that is the water coming out of the rivers of the Congo, the lakes in the south, Malawi, Zimbabwe. All of them are draining into this valley and creating this enormous agriculture possibility with the silts and the fertile soil. And people begin to go where they can grow crops and create surplus. And by creating, surplus is the foundation of economics in civilizing development. And so the Nile Valley, the Happy Valley, allowed for this. But what came also with the fertile soil that is dumping every year is the fish and the new crops of fish coming from all over Africa, which is an enormous source of protein. And men knew back then they needed protein as a part of diet. And so between the ability to fish and plant, we had the need to settle in one place in order to develop this new type of economics. And that grew into, well, I need a carpenter to build a house. I need a brick mason to design the house. And then I need a scientist. The scientist will evolve geometry, for instance, evolve in measuring of land for agricultural purposes, and then it would expand from there into building buildings and multiple level buildings. And so we are able to grow cotton. We are able to create linen. We're able to grow olives. We're able to grow multiple kinds of fruits and vegetables that create a healthy environment. And then you get to produce the artist class, the artisan class, and then you have time for leisure. We don't have to work 24 hours a day. We don't have to work out of bed into bed. We can take off a day and just go with the family and go to the market or do something because you have a surplus of capital now. It takes hundreds of years to get there, but Egypt obviously got there very quickly because of the Happy River, the Nile, and because of the fertility coming from the south as a result of that river. So we built this enormous society that had already existed in other places. If you were to study the maps that the American satellites produce, they'll show you where the rivers ran from the Atlantic Ocean to Lake Chad and Lake Chad into the Nile. So me and you, if we lived in Cameroon, we could get in a boat and in a couple of days or a week, we can go visit our cousin up in Luxor and spend a week with the family and then go back to Cameroon. before Lake Chad would dry up to about 1/10 of its size, and many of the other rivers have evaporated. But they were there, and some of them are still, smaller tributaries that are still there. So as we study physical anthropology, we began to see these things. And that my major was cultural anthropology, but I studied a lot of physical anthropology because it makes sense to understand what's going on around me. We built the most extraordinary civilization in the world, and we developed medicine to a high level. And so you got the Ebers papyrus, medical papyrus. You got the Moscow medical papyrus. You got the C. Smith medical papyrus. These are all medical books in ancient Kemet about abdominal medicine, about heart surgery, about brain surgery, and about obstetrics. We've got all of these things before any European had developed a significant town, let alone civilization. And so this concept of developing a society to take care of yourself, but we have something governing ourselves, and that's part of what I'm going to talk about when I talk about the decline. We got this concept we call ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. It is the philosophical undergirding of the society that is based on justice, all right? Not just justice as a community, but justice in the character and behavior of the individuals that make up the community. And so this gives us strength that creates a civilization that lasts it didn't implode on itself. It lasted for tens of thousands of years. It fell because others saw it and invaded it because they wanted what it was producing. They didn't come because they understood Ma'at. They came because they saw the olive trees. They saw the linen cloth. They saw the iron ore. They saw all of the vegetables and the gold and the diamonds and the salt and all of the things they needed to build their society. Instead of sitting at the border and setting up a table and negotiated, they strapped on their armor and raised their swords and came and took it. And it was all about natural resources and minerals. And when we hit Haiti, you're going to find that's what that's all about too. The same thing.
We certainly, I had anticipated a line of questioning that was so different than where we are. But Lord knows I want to stay right here, and we will get to Haiti. We will definitely get to Haiti with what's going on and sort of the universal dynamics of what's happening in Haiti.
When we think of the Hyksos were the first major invaders, and these are not European. They're probably still Africans, but at the periphery of the civilization. Mm-hmm. And this is the first invasion. So you get the Hyksos coming in around 2000 BC or so. And we defeat them after 300 or 400 years and drive them out. They don't take over the entire Nile Valley. They take over the northern sectors. They take over our borders leading to the Mediterranean, and they're cutting off our trade routes to the east. So it takes time to eradicate them. But there's a second Hyksos invasion. And finally, we defeat them because we decide to take the army all the way into the borders of Turkey. But then they would be followed by another group of Eurasian called the Hittites. And then there would be a second Hittite invasion. We would defeat them finally, but this is taking hundreds of years back and forth. Then we would get the Assyrian invasion, and we would defeat them. And there's a second Assyrian invasion. And even the Bible speaks of this invasion. And they speak of an African pharaoh called Taharka. And I think it's Isaiah who's telling the Israeli, don't mess with this guy because he's going to save Israel from the Assyrians. And they call him King of Egypt and all the world. And when you look at his statue, he's one of the blackest young men in Nile Valley in terms of what's left for us to see. So then we would get the Persian invasion. Then we would get a second Persian invasion. And again, hundreds of years of driving these people out, hundreds of years of occupation, cutting off of trade routes, disrupting the social order. And with each of these invasions, our people go back home. They go back to West Africa. They go back to South Africa. They go back to Central Africa. Some will return when we reclaim the land, but most don't. So they take the culture, ideas, and values with them where they go, as it has been developed at the higher level in the Nile Valley in Kemet. And then finally, we would get the really destructive force in the Greeks, who would come to us as an ally at first. And they had been living and training and studying in our universities. Yes, we invented the universities, and they had been studying for years. Plato, Aristotle, you name it, all of the big boys studied in Africa, then went back to Greece. And like Socrates, they were treated like foreigners. The Greece killed many of them, saying you bring in a foreign idea, a foreign philosophy into Greece. So today they claim this as theirs, but no, they killed those gentlemen or drove them out of town for bringing a foreign, this African philosophy that they now proudly call their philosophy back into their countries. And then the Greeks would be defeated by a more vicious European Aryan group called the Romans. And they will occupy our land for hundreds of years. And we will never recover after the Roman invasion. The children of the Greeks, we call them Arabs today. That's a mixture of the Greeks, the Persians, the Assyrians, the Hyksos, and the African women that they raped in their genocidal warfare. And so this group we call the Arabs. They will take over, but a leader will come among them named Prophet Muhammad. And since this is Ramadan Mubarak, I'll say, wa alayhi wa salam. I was a Muslim imam for many years, went to Mecca back in 74. And so he would bring the same African philosophy that Egypt had in a new presentation called Islam. And he will say, I come not to bring a new religion, but to restore the original that was always there. And he will also state that all people have been sent messengers with these ideas and principles to help them organize their society. But the Arabs would lose control of that system shortly after they invade Kemet. They will lose control. They would take Kemet away from the Romans. They will drive the Romans out. Most people don't go back when they're reconquered. They stay there. The Romans never went back to Rome. They stayed in Egypt. We call them Arabs today, but they're not. And then a group coming out of the Caucasus Mountain called the Kurds and the Turks. First the Mamluk Turks, the Seljuk Turks, and then the Ottoman Turks. By the 10th century, the Turks is controlling all of North Africa, most of the Nile Valley, most of Northeast Africa that we call the Middle East, and all of the Mediterranean under a banner of Islam. And that would last for 800 years or longer, until the First World War, that empire was broken down. In the meantime, North Africa is captured and we pushed down. The people that's living in Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Chad, these are the people that used to live in Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. But they pushed southwards. And the Europeans called them Moors, but they didn't call themselves Moors. They called themselves Gudamas and the Garamantes. So we need to dig in history and realize we should study what we called ourselves and not what the stranger called us to define us. Which I don't think they meant it in a harmful way. That was just their language describing who they were seeing. And so that area that we now call the Middle East, Northeast Africa, comes under occupation and we never get it back. So the people who are in the Nile Valley, there's still millions of them call themselves now Nubians that live in Kemet. But most of that population went into Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania.
I want to ask you, sort of in the midst of that, how extraordinarily impressive it was, the tombs, statutes, and monuments there in the Nile Valley. What is your sense of the thinking of those who wanted to establish that for the world to see, to make it last forever? It seems to me that where we might see the Washington Monument today, or you might see, the Eiffel Tower in Paris
Mhm.
and places elsewhere, but that nothing compares
No,
to what was done and preserved in the Nile Valley.
right. You would see the Washington Monument is a poor replica of the Tekenu, which is a symbol that symbolized male fertility in one sense and the life's resurrection in another sense. So does the Eiffel Tower with a steel replica of that same granite stone. It was one piece of granite. You see one of them when you're looking at the Pope speaking at Vatican. In the yard of the Vatican is one of those that came, I think, from the Great Luxor Temple that has the ball and Christ on top of it. And it's amazing. This is the heart of Christianity, but they have a symbol. Their most significant symbol is the symbol that they say is an African paganistic tool. Um, but they understand exactly what it means. They understand it is the symbol of resurrection. It is the symbol of masculinity, fertility. Um, and so, what our ancestors were doing, one thing we've got to remember: the majority of people in that day and time was illiterate in terms of what we call literacy today. People didn't, in a mass way, had not learned to read or write. So, how do you build a society that speaks to a people symbolically so they don't have to read to understand the intellectual information being presented? And that's where you see the genius in the paintings and the sculptings, where it is a form of linguistics. Okay, it is a linguistic that allows for a society that we would call today illiterate to be literate. And to be literate is to understand the philosophical undergirding of your society. Okay. And they were able to understand that through the statues, the carvings, the modes in which temples were designed, the pillars in the temples, and how they were designed to represent the forest in which you lived every day. Each of the symbols that represent what we call the Neteru, or people like to call the gods, they never call them gods. They call them the quality and attributes of cosmology and ecology, or the divine, or whatever you want to call it, the Most High. Okay, and these qualities and attributes that they wanted the people to understand philosophically was presented using natural elements that demonstrated in their natural growth and development the same concept, ideas, and principles they wanted to capture philosophically. Let me see if I can make that simpler to the people. I got a jackal dog, right? And so when you see the jackal, when they have the scale of Ma'at, you see the jackal on one side of the scale, and he's there testing the scale to balance your heart against a feather. Now, why did they choose a jackal, that dog, to do that? Because this dog had the most keen sense of judgment, and everybody in the society knew that this dog would take its meat that was too coarse and too harsh for his system to digest, and it would bury it in the hot sand. The sand would cook it, and just before it got to the stage of putrid or rotting, the dog would know it's time to dig it up and eat it, and it could digest it. That was a sense of judgment that's extraordinary. And so they used that dog as a symbol of judgment for the intellectual dialogue that the people needed to have with one another. And since the people knew what the dog symbolized, they understood what that symbol symbolized. That is talking about judgment. See, or the dung beetle. They used the dung beetle to represent, what we would call regeneration or resurrection. You get this little bug, and it buries its eggs in the cow dung, and it so that when the egg is hatched, it has some nutrients for the babies to survive. But something that you thought was dead and gone came rising up out of the sand in a certain season, looking just like the thing that had died. And so it symbolized resurrection. And the people understood that conceptually. So when you wanted to make a symbol to give an idea intellectually to people, you use a symbol out of the ecology that they understand the meaning of. So all of that sculpting and art and stuff was a writing system, an educational system, a communication system that allowed for the most, what we would consider today the most illiterate, to be very literate. And that's the extraordinary nature of the society. Besides doing it in stone, so it's there for eternity. So thousands of years later, you and I can go and see it and go, wow, and read the same ideas that they were giving to themselves. We could now read these ideas and see the importance of those principles that they called the admonitions of the Ma'at, or the 42 laws of Ma'at, of which there were hundreds of those laws, but those were the 42 primary ones for daily living.
So the gangbanger, as they are referred to,
Mm-hmm.
and those that carjack folks in our communities today,
Mm-hmm.
and the proliferation of us killing each other today would not happen if people were taught from the time they have the ability, children were taught from the time they have the ability to learn of the things you just communicated. Now, we would have to be on here probably 10 hours or 10 weeks to explain the aggressiveness and the strategy of white supremacy to separate today's youth from the knowledge of themselves so very long ago. You know, I have this fantasy, Professor Smalls, and the fantasy is that 10 or 100 professional athletes, actors, or whatever who become multi-millionaires head towards becoming billionaires would pool a fund of money. And it could start anywhere, but I'm going to say, we think of crime-ridden neighborhoods, lots of people crowded in asphalt jungles. Start in New York, and to intentionally, specifically start teachings, have schools to help peel back the onion and unravel where we are today, to make us just simply, if our youth would be made today aware of their real essence and from whence they come, and they ain't niggas, but they're derived from kings and queens who set forth pure, great examples of how humans should exist. That's my because I wouldn't have to concern myself with maybe being carjacked, Because when you know yourself, you don't practice that kind of behavior.
Right.
Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. The one thing that they've cut us off from, Dr. Asa Hilliard said, true freedom is to be shackled to your identity. True freedom is to be shackled to your identity. The question then is, what is that identity? We call it African. But what is this thing we call African? African, in terms of cultural behavior, with an attempt to replicate the universe itself and how it behaves. Because in its behavior, there's an equilibrium and a harmony and balance that allows it to just stay right, do right. Right? And so we have a term that says, I'm God having a human experience. I like to think I coined that term back there quite a few years back. And people used to walk out of the meeting because Brother Small went too far now, saying he's God having a human experience. But I grew up in the Baptist church. And yes, I did become a Muslim imam. But you don't forget your training foundation. What was it Papa and them was saying? My grandfather was the minister. What were they trying to teach us? You see, because the Baptist church and the AME church and some of the others that followed were not really Christian churches. They were Christian facades that were sanctuary to an African spiritual behavior that was internal to it. And we've lost that. We didn't understand what it was we hid in the church. It was the only sanctuary we had. It was the only place where we could come together and be our African spiritual and cultural self. What is that African spiritual and cultural self? It's predicated on a knowledge, which is communicated through language, through song, through dance, through drama. It's predicated on a body of knowledge that says, I'm God having a human experience. What does that mean? That means that we just walk backwards. I'm Brother Small. I'm my mother and father. When they gave birth to me, they gave birth to themselves. They were my four grandparents. When they gave birth to my mom and dad, they had given birth to themselves, and my mom and dad, in giving birth to me, which was giving birth to themselves, has given birth also to my grandparents within me and my great parents within me and my great-grandparents, going back to the beginning when the universe, or what we call God, the divine, decided to be human, decided to manifest itself as a human, like it manifests itself as a butterfly or a tree. And so it makes God our primary ancestry. And that's the way African culture teaches what we call African religion. It explained that relationship, that you are not other than divine. But there must be a methodology to keep that in the memory. That's called culture, your primary education system. So when our culture was damaged, when our language was removed, and it only takes one generation to do this for the most part, but we beat them because most people didn't understand. We lied to ourselves because we played fake history. We were never enslaved 400 years in North America. We were enslaved less than 200 years in North America, which meant our African retention should have been greater than anybody else in the hemisphere. And some people think because they have a drum or they can do certain dance steps as dance in many other parts of the hemisphere, that they have a greater retention. But if you go into any Black Baptist church, any down-home African Baptist church, you see every African dance footstep that came from the continent still being retained. We call it shouting today. All right? The rhythm in which we speak English, as long as we've been here, we don't sound like white people. We still speak an African grammar toning with a European vocabulary structure. We can call it whatever we want. Ebonics, Geechee Gullah. We're still Africans that have never been able to allow ourselves to linguistically acculturate European American.
Yeah, and that's pointed out. That's validated in the very sense that if you call somebody on the phone, so many say, well, without seeing anybody. It ain't
Hmm.
no video phone, it's a regular phone.
Right.
That's black man. That's black person. She black. He black.
Yeah, we know. And
So,
so the thing we call culture, the thing, it is a body of information that our ancestors have brought down from time immemorial to instruct the development of our character. So culture, as Sister Marimba Ani said, is the tool that protects the people from genocide. If you hang on to your culture, you can avoid the genocide. And obviously, we didn't do that bad because what happened to us in North America should have decimated us, and we should have been totally genocided because that was genocide that was practiced against us. But because of our culture and because of the sanctuary that we call the church, and me, I was very brutal against the church for a period of time because I didn't understand this yet. And then I realized we weren't imitating white people. We used the only sanctuary we were allowed to be ourselves. On Sunday, for a few hours, we could be Africans. On Sunday, for a few hours, through music and dance, we could communicate to each other spiritually in a way we couldn't outside in front of the enemy.
mhm.
So we need to relook the Black church to see where did we bury Africa and resurrect it, because it's right there. It didn't go anywhere. Because a bumblebee will never stop being a bumblebee no matter where you house it. Malcolm said a cat having kittens in an oven don't make them biscuits.
Yeah.
It sounds like a simple little cliche, but it is so scientifically true. So an African born in America, we are the superior. You and I are not jet black, but our African genes still superior. It overrides everything else, no matter what the aesthetics may suggest. Because there's something in the construct of the mitochondria that we get from our mothers that nothing can alter. So if I want to trace you back to anywhere, I get on your mitochondria ship and it'll tell me just who mommy and daddy was 10,000 years ago.
Mhm. You
That's the
know,
movie.
I saw in preparing to talk to you today, I saw something. I saw a video of your speaking of the superiority,
Hmm.
what has been the African superiority.
Hmm.
And you made it very simple by saying, wherever we are allowed or find ourselves participating, whatever it is,
Right.
whether it's bouncing a basketball or it being
A
uh,
physician.
Willie Mays or in the highest levels of academia or science or any of that, we win.
Right. And look at history.
And I would submit that those who are so ultimately feeling their clearly identified inferiority
Hmm.
and moving, it's talking about in this country.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
actually it's happening pretty much all over the world, but moving further to the right, they see that
Yes.
because there is a Tiger Woods,
Right.
because there is a Serena Williams who, when given an opportunity to participate, not only participate and win, but they dominate.
Right. Now, what they don't see, my brother, is our humanity.
Yeah.
That we don't come to imprison them. We don't come to beat them down. We actually come to pick them up because they can't do that. They can't imagining, they have a problem imagining us doing that. That we can be the winner and still say it's all good. They can't do that. And so that's the difficulty between us and the community from the north that we have to deal with.
If I use this interview symbolically as a tree, my God, there's so many branches. There's so many roots and ways to come to and at this interview.
Mhm.
I want to switch a little bit here, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And you mentioned Malcolm.
Mm,
And when people become aware of Professor James Small, they know a lot about what you do and what you've done. Um, when I saw the piece that you were the chief lead bodyguard
mm,
for Malcolm's sister
mm.
for many years, I just want you to I just want you to talk about that experience for a moment.
Mm. I met Malcolm in 1963, only for a short period of time. I came looking for Malcolm. I came from South Carolina. I told my mother I'd seen him on television. My mother and father was very progressive in the labor movement. My grandfather was the head of Prince Hall. And so we were a very active political family. And so I saw this man on TV that just blew me away. My mom and dad had moved to New York from South Carolina. That was our home for work purposes, because that was the reason for most of us migrating to the north, as well as the terror. But we didn't have that kind of terror in South Carolina on the coast. But we had an economic issue. And so my mom brought me up, had my brother drive me up in 63. And I found this God. I can't call the man nothing else but God having a human experience, standing on 141st Street and 8th Avenue in front of Food Family Supermarket, giving up flyers against the march on Washington. And me and my friend Dwight Green, we walked up to him, frightened because we were 16 years old and he was this giant of a man. And we wanted to meet him and we wanted to join him. And I was talking about leaving school. I didn't understand conceptually who he was or what the nation was. And he gave us a long talk about why we needed to stay in school
Mm,
and the role that education would play in freeing our people. That was my impetus for going to college, was that
mm,
speech from Malcolm. And he said other things, but that's the thing I remembered. So when I went back home to Georgetown in September, I thought I was Malcolm X. I just, my negative concept of what this man was, got in a lot of trouble with the white people down there. I joined the Naval Reserves and they railroaded me in the military. Graduation day, I had to get on a bus. Even though I had 3 college deferments, they managed to take them away from me. But I had a friend who did get me out after 2 months, 2.5 months, and I did go to Savannah State. Um, but I went in the war. Some how do you say, racial incident occurred in Savannah, and I had to leave town. And I went full time in the Navy, and Malcolm was killed in 1965. That was 1964 when I got out of high school. So I got home in 1966. I was a war resistor in the military. I refused to fight in Vietnam, along with others. I went alone. Other brothers refused also. We took court martials, and we won. We won because we never declared a war in Vietnam.
mhm.
And so I was the librarian in the Navy for quite a period of time, and I did a lot of reading, including their law. And so when I came home, I went straight looking for Malcolm's organization. And they were a rally on 125th Street, and his sister speaking. I don't tell people the detail of this. And I wanted to show my prowess because I'm just out of the military. I'm sharp. I was trying to be a Navy SEAL at the time called the UDT, but I didn't swim well enough. But I had a lot of skills and training. So I walked and get through all of her security, and I get to the stage and I put my hand on her feet. I don't know why I did that. And see, the security,
Because you were God having a human experience.
absolutely. But I didn't know that either then.
Yeah, yeah, I get you.
When I did this, her security jumped on me and she made them back off. She said, leave him alone. She'd never seen me before. I'd never seen her before. She said, leave him alone. Asked somebody for a pen, gave me her phone number and her address, and told me to be at this meeting on a Tuesday night. So Tuesday afternoon, I'm trying to be slick. I show up at the place just to see what's up, right? And she answers the door, but she's no longer in her beautiful African outfit with her gaily. She's got a rag on her head and a wig hanging half off and a dress that was torn and a feather duster. So I asked, does Miss Collins, I didn't recognize her in this disguise. And she spoke in a very down south accent and said, there's a meeting on Tuesday and I should come to the meeting and she would be there. And when I came to the meeting, I recognized that the lady who had the feather duster and the lady on the stage and the lady sitting here on this stage in the center is the same lady,
Wow.
And in about 3 weeks, her chief security, who was another brother, Willie Starks, who was with Malcolm, came to me and says, we're considering you because of your behavior and coming into the organization to work on Sister Ella's security. And I said, I got to talk to my family, my mother and my father. Even though I was 21, I still lived with my parents and honored them. And they said it would be a good thing. And so I told the brothers I would be, and they began to train me. And in another 2 months, I was moved to Boston to be her personal bodyguard and her chauffeur. And that went on for 18 years. We did a lot of political work together. We were arrested in LA together back in 1970. I remember that day. And they tried to take us out. But thanks to Yasser Arafat, the FBI stepped in and backed the LAPD off of us. But they broke Ella's hand in 7 places, beat me up badly. We spent a few nights in jail. And, that was one of the harshest times we had. But the brothers had told me, this is your first time taking her on your own. If she don't come back, you don't come back. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
so I had to do everything I could. I can't give you all the details of all the things that we had to do. But living in that space, I learned about Malcolm in ways other people may never know Malcolm. Ella loved her brother so much. I wore Malcolm's bathrobe. I slept in Malcolm's room. She had not touched that room since he died. His notes, his books, his papers, everything. And so I had access to all of this and being taught by the woman who taught Malcolm. There's a myth that Malcolm became the Malcolm he was because of the nation. The nation gave him the opportunity to be the Malcolm he was, but he became the Malcolm he was out of the little family. There was 3 women in the house where Malcolm grew up. Ella, his big sister, his Aunt Gracie, and his Aunt Sarah. Ella, Gracie, Ella, and Sarah graduated from Spelman. These were very educated ladies. Sister Gracie was a homemaker, but an absolute brilliant goddess. Those 3 women gave us Malcolm X, as well as the conditions and the situation around his life. And when he was in prison, that was Ella manipulating the prison system to get him to where he could get to a library.
That fantasy that I had about the millionaires pooling their funds and creating a school. I want you to be in charge of that school.
Yeah, that's not a fantasy. If we could pull that off, because when Malcolm was asked, what is it that you're talking about when you're talking about Black nationalism? Because people had made Black nationalism sound like some negative thing, but nobody makes Chinese nationalism look bad or Greek nationalism look bad, or
Right.
So Malcolm told him, said, nationalism is simply controlling the economics, politics, and the culture where you live.
Yeah.
Later on in the speech, he'd say that you must be in charge of the land, labor, and resources where you live. Right? If you're to provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for your family and the neighbors where you live. That's what this man was talking about. And he was very clear on it. He tried to make things very simple. We make things too complicated when we talk to our people. In order for me to provide, I've been married 54 years to my same little sweetheart that I met at 18 when we went to college. We have 4 kids and 2 adopted kids and 20-something grandkids. And we still have to teach them that same thing, that you must be able to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for yourself and your family. And to do that, you must assist others in your neighborhood to be able to provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for them and their family. And if you do that by taking control of economic, politics, and culture where you live, then you truly practice an African spirituality, brother. Because this brings you right back to why you vote and why you should be voter literate. This brings you back to how you choose a candidate to run for office, to represent your interests. This brings you back to why you want to make sure your school system works so it can prep you to be employed. Because most people that commit crimes are unemployed people. Most people that commit crime because they didn't have access to the education that allowed them to provide food, clothing, shelter, and safety for themselves. And so you go into this other hopeless, desperate space that leads to all of the dark sides of the street that we end up walking on with the drugs, with all of the things that come with not having an identity, not having a hope, not seeing a possibility, not knowing another way out. You see? And so spirituality to me means to be conscious of your reality, to be conscious of your reality and functional in that consciousness.
So, to move to another and very current issue. Yesterday, I spoke at length with Ezeli Zanto. I've had her on a few times, and Lord knows you know who I'm very much know who I'm talking about. she's an authority. She's a warrior.
Absolutely.
On Haiti. So I talked to her yesterday, and this morning I see some headlines. And one of them, for example, is author Mitch Albom evacuated from Haiti among gang violence and unrest. That struck me because a lifetime ago I was involved in the boxing world. And he was a phenomenal boxing writer. Other stories, news about embassy and security, U.S. and Haiti, new team of Marines deployed to Haiti for U.S. embassy security.
Right.
U.S. deploys Marine anti-terrorism unit to Haiti to protect the embassy. And then I saw something, well, here's the headline, but I was talking about another one. Haiti is preparing itself for new leadership. Gangs want a seat. And this is ABC News. Uneasy quiet in Haiti capital after Prime Minister resigns.
Henri, what's his name?
Yeah. So it's something that I'm fully aware that you have kept abreast of. You've spoken about it too often. When someone is a proponent of a line of thinking, strategy, or otherwise, that is pro-Black, you instantly get put in the category, oh, you conspiracy and all the rest.
I know.
I want to give you the platform here to talk to us about what's happening in Haiti right now, and has that as a very clear, unmistakable thread for what now is centuries. Whether it was Papa Doc Duvalier, the Tonton Macoute, Aristide, all of that. If you could,
let me see if I can do a salad bowl here and make us a nice tossed salad on the serious side. The island of Hispaniola, on which that the Spanish call Hispaniola, the whole island was called Haiti, by the people who lived there before the white man came. So that's the original name that the people have retained for that portion of the island. The Europeans came in 1492, and Haiti got free from under them. The French came in 1625, and by 1789, the Africans had driven the French out, which was one of the richest colonies in America. It produced more capital than any other colony, British or Spanish, in America. And when the war was fought, led by Toussaint Louverture at first and concluded by Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the first emperor of Haiti, in 1804, it was the first time in the history of the world, and the only time in the history of the world, where an enslaved population had freed itself and created a free republic.
From an imperial power.
Not just any imperial power. We're the only one that defeated Napoleon Bonaparte. We broke his back.
Yeah.
Destroyed the best of his army, killed his brother-in-law, all right, and defeat some of his mightiest generals, and buried tens of thousands of his soldiers in the soil of Haiti. There's a bitterness on the part of Europe because we not only defeated Napoleon, because the British came, we defeated the British. We defeated the Spanish, and the American was financing them, so we also defeated the Americans. No one in the history of the world has ever done that. There's a bitterness and an arrogance in the soul of the Americans and the European on account of that. That's one piece of it. There's so much. But in 1915, and America didn't recognize Haiti as a nation until 1862, even though it was free since 1804. And even then, they didn't send an ambassadorship. They sent some sort of name they named for this person. But the point is, in 1915, America invades Haiti. From 1915 to 1934. That's a long time. It occupies Haiti. Haiti's constitution said any person who got free from slavery, any black person come to Haiti, they were free. America resented that because America still had slavery, and they were afraid that Haiti would cause the slaves in America to rebel, and which Haiti did. Because even our great Virginia warrior, Nat Turner, when he was captured and went to court, the judge asked him who was his leader. And Turner said, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. So the judge told the sheriff, go find this Dessalines fella and you bring him back in here. Well, when they come back, they said, well, this Dessalines fella is dead. So he asked Turner again, who is your leader? And he said again, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. That's how much power the Haitian Revolution had on the psyche of the African-American rebels, even up to that point. But Haiti used its wealth during that period to finance Boulevard to free South America from the Spanish. And he asked only one thing, when you do this, free my black people out of slavery. He's resented, Haiti is resented for that to this day. And then we fast forward to 1915, when America invades Haiti, stays there from 1915 to 1934. It changes the Haitian constitution, especially the clause that said whites could not own land in the country. It brought in Citibank and some others, and they took the Haitian gold reserve of billions of dollars and brought it back to New York, where it's worth even billions more, if not $1 trillion, and have never returned it back to Haiti. Further, why is the Americans there? That's not the first time they intervened. They would intervene again before Duvalier come in, and they would back to Duvalier and all of that terrorism through the 50s into the 60s, 70s. So Duvalier was there, 30 years? And then they would overthrow, the American government would overthrow the first truly elected president, Aristide. Or they will overthrow his government twice and take him to the Central African Republic in the middle of the night and drop him off at an airport. And if it wasn't for people fighting from around the world, they might have killed him. And all this, while all this is going on, to the time they would bring in this President Preval, Haiti is being used as one of the major drug corridors to bring cocaine and other drugs into America, right under the eyes of the DEA and the control of the American embassy. And I heard that there was a point where Preval was brought in and told by the American embassy not to touch the cartel's man, because if you kill him, somebody will kill you, they told him. And of course, when Preval is removed and they brought in, I think, Martelli, the Clinton, Mrs. Clinton, America is the cause of all that you're seeing on TV in Haiti right now. But it wasn't just America. I wrote their names. I didn't want to miss any of them. There's a group and it's called the core group. It's Brazil, Canada, France, the USA, and Israel. And you say, well, why? What are all those countries doing there? That's because we don't pay attention. You can go online and look at the CIA report every month. They report on every country in the world, and they put it online. You can Google them. And then you'll find that Haiti has bauxite, Haiti has copper, Haiti has calcium carbonate, Haiti has gold, about 30 to $40 billion worth of gold resources in the ground. Haiti has marble, Haiti has oil, an oil reserve that's bigger than that of Venezuela, and America won't allow Haiti to drill for it. Every person in Haiti would be a millionaire if they could just get to their oil. Haiti has natural gas, Haiti has limestone, Haiti has zinc. That's on the mineral side. On the agricultural side, Haiti has abundance of arable land. Coffee is the highest export. Sugarcane is the second highest export. Haiti has rice. Haiti has corn. Haiti has cocoa. Haiti has sorghum. Why are we made to think these people are poor, poor people? Haiti is the richest island in the Caribbean. So why? Because somebody is stealing the bauxite. Somebody is stealing the copper. Somebody is stealing the chromium. Somebody is stealing the marble. Somebody is stealing the gold and the zinc and the limestone. But the thing they want most is the iridium, the metal that can conduct heat that they use in the aerospace industry and for military planes and missiles. And Haiti has mountains of it. Haiti is the second largest deposit of that, South Africa being the first. But it doesn't stop there. Most of the shipping from the Atlantic goes between Haiti and Cuba. And America feels it must control and protect that shipping lane. So it already occupies the island of Haiti that's across from Cuba and a part of the Haiti national homeland, and have been for years with its Navy and its military. But even more than that, America needs a base in the Caribbean so that they can keep control of Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and any other country they think may try to break away from them. So this is imperialism 101 that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And the gangs, the people they're calling the gangs, they were armed by us.
Yeah.
You understand? And now you've got some guy, what's his name? I wrote it down. Guy Philippe. Somebody said he was on TV last night. I missed that. He just got out of prison for drug smuggling 6 months ago. But Biden and them have sent him now to Haiti to somehow manipulate and take control over the armed brothers and sisters down there that they call in gangs.
Yeah, and the leader, the leader that was assassinated by this quote unquote paramilitary group, those who are speaking out talk about their affiliation
with the American government,
with the American government, and to just illustrate the propaganda of American mainstream media. They sanitize the shit that America is taking on Haiti and its people.
Yes.
Make those who are in the street the barbarians, while the imperialists,
the real barbarians, the real gangs,
the real gang, continue to smile and have the comfort and the benefit and the luxury of propagandists, whether it is Fox, CNN, MSNBC, the Washington Post, or otherwise.
They all work for the same core group and oligarchs. Then you've got the force they call the oligarchs. These are the Syrians and the Lebanese who Haiti once gave refuge to out of the Ottoman Empire. And they're now in collaboration and have been with the core group. They're controlling the economics on the ground for that core group. But the people who now have the guns, who was financed by many of them and armed by this government, the guns is now being turned on them. And we hope that the young people who are turning on them have developed some consciousness and some clarity on what they can do with the power that's now in their hands. Of course, those Marines that were sent in this morning, America has one of the biggest embassy in the Western Hemisphere in Cuba.
Yeah.
What are you doing with the biggest embassy in the hemisphere in one of the smallest countries in the hemisphere, supposedly the poorest country in the hemisphere? What is going on in that embassy? I've
Yeah.
seen it. And you're talking about acres of a building complex.
Yeah.
You know?
Professor Small, the Rock Newman Show 2.0 has had a crush on you for a long time.
And I had a
I'm gonna
question on you. I
consider
was
us
feeling
getting.
sad, Rock. I said,
I'm gonna consider us getting together at this altar. That now we married, and so we got to stay united at the hip, the foot, and the head. And you got to come back. And I tell people, oh, you got to come back at least one more time. Now we got to keep doing stuff together, brother, because you're just so extraordinarily special. And if I am true to my sentiment that I want to change from the little platform that I have, the narrative of who we are, frankly, there's no one better for me to have access to tell that story than you are. I love you, brother, and I want to thank you so much for being on the Rock Newman Show 2.0 today. I do want to tell everyone that on the this Saturday, the 16th, at with Dr. Baruch's place in Capitol Heights, Maryland, you will be there live and in living color. Thank you again, brother. I love you.
one more piece
Please do it.
on Sunday. I will be in Baltimore at the Holistic Wellness Center at 5527 Hartford Road. Holistic Welfare Center, 5527 Hartford Road, and that's at 12 noon. So come when we finish. For those of us who want to see it twice, the title there would be For Community Power, Home and Abroad, talking about the economic politics and culture being applied in the community we live in. Baltimore is the best place to do that right now, I think. And we'll be at the Holistic Wellness Center, 5527 Hartford Road at 12 noon. So join us there as well.
You're going to be making an incredible impact, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, going up to Baltimore on Sunday. I want to profoundly thank you again from the bottom of my heart for sharing this time with us today.
Yes.
And I truly look forward to us doing this more.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Folks, that wraps us up for today. My producer, I know, is going to scream at me afterwards. I haven't asked you one time to subscribe, to like, or share, or do any of those things. So I'm asking you to do that now. Thank you for joining us today, and I can't wait to get back with you at another time in the not too distant future. God bless all of you gods who are having a human experience.
Yes.